Hey everyone, this is Sydney Garrard with Soul Hype Cindy. We spend our lives navigating friendships, relationships, health. Let's do it together. Let's leap into our best and most enriching lives through true and inspiring stories. Welcome to Soul Hype Cindy. Today I have on Rebecca Balkcom, who is a spouse. She's married to Murray, one of the nicest guys in South Walton. She's a mother of two, Lake in Georgia, and she's a graduate at the University of Tennessee. And tell me one thing that you respect about Murray.
Well, I can easily tell you that because this morning, as I was trying to get ready to come be on your podcast, we had a dog issue. Our dog had explosive diarrhea. Sorry. And I tried cleaning it up and washing the dog and realized that I was totally inept to the task. So I called my husband after he dropped off the kids to school, and he came and helped clean up round two. So I told him that we have to stay together forever because I cannot do stuff like that on my own.
So he's just a great teammate.
He is a great teammate, and he definitely does a lot of stuff. We each have our own roles.
Yes.
But we know what our areas are, what we're good at.
Okay, so
He's good at dog poop.
He's good at dog food. That's his department. Now tell us a funny story about your childhood.
A funny story about my childhood.
A funny story.
My gosh. Okay, there are a lot of funny stories about my childhood, but this will you'll appreciate this story. So I think I was in the first grade, and in our class, the teacher wanted us to draw a biblical figure or do a drawing. And my mom said, and I think she still has this drawing. I drew Mary, and Mary was ascending to heaven, and she had a purse, lipstick, and high heels.
That's awesome. She's fashionable.
She was fashionable.
She's fashionable.
So that kind of tells you a little bit. I am not fashionable anymore, but
you are fashionable.
That's the funniest thing I can think of that comes to mind.
Okay, so after you graduated from Tennessee, you started your career in Nashville, and you did public relations, marketing, event planning for the City magazine.
Yes.
Yes.
So, yeah, it was interesting. I actually started off at a public relations firm, and we did a lot of everything. We did PR, I did media buying, event planning, and it was a really great way to kind of try a lot of different things that I had studied in college. And I loved meeting with people who worked at publications and people who would come see me, and I would help them. I would purchase media for our clients. So I was like, I really want to be on that side of it. And the City magazine that was currently there went out of business. So there was a woman in town who wanted to start a City magazine. So she called me, and we kind of went on that journey together. And it's still there. While I was there, it sold to Gannett, which was a pretty big deal. But I worked there from the beginning until I moved here, which was about 18 years ago.
18 years each. Yeah. We're like the original locals now.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. When there's so many new people here.
Yeah. When I moved here, there were like 50 locals, and you didn't really make a plan to go to a restaurant. You just kind of pulled up, and you knew on Tuesday night that the whole town would be at Cafe Rendezvous in Seaside or Old Florida Fish House. But
that's where Jeff and I had our first official date. It was Old Florida Fish House. Did you know that?
I love that.
He ordered an appetizer without asking me if I wanted it. I was like, you just ordered an appetizer without me knowing that I like it. He's like, well, do you like that? I'm like, yeah, I do, but I'm just saying you didn't ask me.
Yeah.
I was letting him know the maintenance level early on. And so you are a cancer survivor?
Yes. That's really funny that you say that, because I haven't really heard that phrase.
Oh, survivor?
Yeah, I don't. No one has really called me that or in official capacity. So I haven't really thought. I think I was in the weeds for so long And part of me, I'm still, I still have to go and have routine testing it was 3 months, now it's 6 months. So I think a part of me is still like, I'm not totally out of the woods. I mean, I am a survivor, but I think once you've kind of been bitten by that bug, it will always, it'll always be in the back of your mind that it's something that could be there. But yeah.
Of all Rebecca's accomplishments, I would say one of the biggest is the 2022 Pee Wee #1 champs for the Panhandle Youth Football Association.
Good Seahawks.
So if you ever been around youth sports, especially cheerleading, you would know that's pretty much like getting an Olympic gold medal.
Right. And Cindy was right there with me.
I was.
She did our choreography. That was incredible.
I'll never forget when you called me. You're like, hey, and I was like, hey, and you go, will you choreograph our dance for competition? And I was like, sure. And then I hung up the phone and I go, what did I just agree to? I haven't made up a dance in like 25 years. But I had a blast. We've had a blast.
It was so fun.
So you love coaching.
I do love coaching. I love coaching so much that I bought a book for my husband to give him on his birthday. He's a basketball coach and a rec level basketball coach to my daughter's basketball team. But I bought him Pathead Summit's. She was an infamous Lady Vols basketball coach, most winning college basketball coach, and I gave him her memoir. She is now deceased. And he's not a big reader, so I don't know why I keep giving him books, thinking that he's one day going to read them. So I took it and started reading it, and I was thinking, it doesn't matter that it's about basketball. I love coaching, and this is about who, she was and all of her principles that led her as a coach. So I'm reading it right now, and I find it really fascinating. That's how much I love coaching.
Why do you think it's so impactful, special for like the youth?
I think it is so interesting, and I don't think I knew this when I got into it. I just volunteered to bring water to a practice. I didn't.
And somebody's like, hey.
Yeah. And somebody was like, hey, can you coach this team? But I think it's really rare for someone to genuinely love a sport and want to give that gift and impart that part of it to a child, and then be able to teach them skills while also keeping it fun so they remain interested in the sport. I think that is a delicate balance. And if you hit that sweet spot, that formula, there's like nothing else. I just think there is such joy for me in it. It's selfish because I love it. It just fills my cup. Really.
Well, I think everyone would agree that you're a really good coach and that all your girls love you so much and you do all the things. When I coached, I would be like, what would Rebecca do right now? Because I was like, what would she do? Well, I'm like, yes, I can pick that person up. Yes, I can do, because I knew that you would always respond. Yes, like, how can I help? How can I do this? And, and you could see when you see the kids later, they're like, Coach Rebecca.
Right.
My daughter, who cheered with Rebecca, still calls her Coach Rebecca. So I think that's real. I think it's an honor title.
Oh, that's so sweet. I really love it. And I think it is for the many coaches and really teachers also, more importantly, teachers. But I think you see how selfless you have to be and take your ego completely out of it. You're not going to be looking your cutest most of the time. I mean, it's just so selfless, I think, to do it right and just be there for the kids. So
let's leap together into your cancer journey. So you were just saying that you feel like the title survivor is something you really haven't owned yet. And
yeah, I mean, it feels like it was just yesterday, although it's been a little over a year since I finished my last round of chemo. And I went through a year of chemo. So it is still really fresh. Mm-hmm. And I think the journey, though, is very clear. I can look back definitely with a different pair of glasses than I had when I was in it. From symptoms to diagnosis to treatment, and then to post-treatment, what I went through. And that was kind of traumatic. So there's a lot of elements, I think, there that I would hope others could benefit from my experience, and definitely some things I neglected to see, not because I wanted to neglect, but because you just don't know what you don't know. And especially as a busy mom and a wife, and you know, we're living our lives, and so sometimes what becomes an ailment, like a backache or night sweats, I think maybe I'm going through menopause, you just kind of, you know, sweep them away and under the rug, and then learn to deal with the pain until it's something that you can't ignore, or at least that's what I did.
Was pain, you feel like now looking back, was the pain something that was kind of your first, you know, thought like, hey, there really is something wrong here?
Well, the pain was so excruciating that I remember at one point telling my husband, I would imagine this is what people with bone cancer feel. That's how excruciating the pain was. I thought that I had a slip disc, and I thought it was literally an injury from coaching because I put one of the girls on my shoulders, and I thought I had a pinched nerve. So I gone to an orthopedic surgeon. I went to physical therapy. I went to a chiropractor. I was doing a lot of different things. And so that back pain, I lived with that for about 2 years.
2 years.
And looking back, and my oncologist also said that was the onset. That's what it was.
That was the onset.
That was the onset of the cancer. And
you must have a really high threshold for pain, because if I have any little pain, I'm like, oh, something's wrong with me. I have like the smallest threshold pain.
Well, he later told me that the pain must have been so horrific, I should have been in the hospital on a morphine drip, the kind of pain I was experiencing. And I wouldn't take pain pills, so I was just mixing Tylenol, Aleve, and I had this combo. But I had to do it every few hours, and I had to sit a certain way, and it was. But I look back at the insanity of just what we learn to live with and what becomes our norm.
Well, because it like starts to, you know, you get used to it.
Right.
And then it gets a little bit more severe, and then you get used to it.
Right.
And then it gets a little more severe, and then you just kind of like push through. And you were like saying, as a mom, you're like, I don't have to, you know, like if I'm tired sometimes, I mean, not comparing at all, but I'll be so tired sometimes. I'm like, oh, like my body is saying rest.
Right.
You know, so it's like, but if you just compound it and you just keep pushing through, I think that a lot of mothers do that, and fathers too. They just push through versus stopping and listening to their bodies and saying, okay, there's something right now that isn't well within
right.
me.
And I think something that is very interesting that a friend of mine is a nurse, and she later told me this, that anytime you have an impending sense of doom, like you...
Did you have that?
So I later looked back. So I was in a book study with a group of women. And this book study, we went through this workbook. And these were women I trust, I love, they know me well. And we got to a question, and it was, what do you fear most? What are you holding on to that you're afraid of? And I answered the question honestly, and I said, I'm afraid to go to the doctor. And I'm afraid to really go to the doctor, not like when you go if you have the flu.
Yes.
But I'm afraid to go and say I need a full physical. And then I put, I'm afraid that they'll tell me that I'm dying. And it's so crazy for me to look back and read that, because part of me knew. Like
part of me knew,
like, you know, on a some buried level, I knew something was really wrong. So from that book study, from that day, those women made me call my doctor, and they said they would call me every 30 minutes until I had an appointment.
Oh, so they kept you accountable.
They kept me accountable.
It's so important to have people in your life that keep you accountable.
So I had that community. We happened to be going through this workbook, and I mean, I have to say, it gives me cold chills. I feel like and the women and I have talked about this since, we feel like that God was in that room that day. That it was
yes.
There was something else at work. It was not just that we were doing a workbook.
Well, he's always there.
Right.
Yes.
So
when you were first diagnosed, did that affect your faith? Were you?
No. In fact, it made my faith stronger, I think. And also I had to, as many people do, I would think, I had to revisit what that looked like for me. Because you can be a spiritual person, or I thought I was a very spiritual person. You can be a very religious person. But when you think you're going to die, and I mean, it was pretty bad. It was stage 4. It was not good. When you're faced with that, it makes you look at things differently. And the veil became thinner, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
So my eyes were open to things that I did not see before. I started having these little miracles happening all around me. And strangers would come up to me at doctor's appointments and say things that I knew were not coming from them.
Yes.
It was unbelievable. And I wrote everything down. And it's hard for me. I can't go back and read that yet. Because it was so poignant and it was so raw, and I don't think I'm far enough away from it to be able to look at that. But yeah, the veil became thinner. I mean, it was definitely a more profound experience. How can it not be?
Yes.
But I did.
Well, some people either lean in, and then some people,
right.
Unfortunately, get like upset or angry at the fact, So, why do you think that you went to really kind of look and see what within you helped you kind of make the veil thinner, per se? My husband started taking Make Wellness peptides in preparation for a ski trip. He lost weight. He had more energy and focus. I wanted in. After 2 weeks, I was a believer. If you want more information, go to my Instagram page at SoulHypeCindy. Now back to the show.
Right. So I have been through something pretty significant in my life almost 9 years ago. And it was where it wasn't necessarily a physical thing, but it was a complete spiritual surrender where I had to give up something, and I gave up alcohol. And it required me to completely surrender everything I knew and have faith that everything would be okay. But I was giving up something that society says is okay. All my friends, drink alcohol. It definitely wasn't the norm. But in that deep, deep surrender that I had to take and that I experienced, it was a profound surrender. So having already done that, I feel like it prepared me when this physical thing happened, that I was able to surrender and trust my doctors. So I said to my oncologist, I trust you, and I don't really want to know. I don't really want to see scans. I don't want to be on Google every night.
Yeah, that doesn't, yeah. Oh.
I just knew, a part of me knew that it was going to take everything inside of me just to get through the treatments. And I didn't have the mental space to get angry or question, or I just surrendered and showed up. But I learned to do that before.
So for the audience out there that may have a friend who's been diagnosed with cancer, MD Anderson says there's the top 3 things that you can do to support someone who's going through cancer is deliver meals to them, is help them with the household, keep things running. And the third is give the primary caregiver a break. Yes. So I know when you first had your diagnosis, What for you did you really feel like you needed? Because I know that sometimes it's hard when you're in a situation like that to see kind of past anything within the moment. Like you're in the middle of the forest and the trees are so close.
Yeah.
So like, what would you recommend? I know what MD Anderson says, but what do you say for
Sure.
Like if you were a friend of someone who has been diagnosed?
I think if I were a friend, the person who's in it, they don't know what they need.
Okay.
And so they can't say, hey, thank you for your offer. I need you to do this. That's too much. Like, they don't know what they need, and they don't need to be taxed with giving feedback on, hey,
Yes.
maybe you could bring a meal and drop it off on this day. Even that's too much.
Yes. Okay.
So I will tell you the best thing that somebody did for me, and it was you. You said, I'm coming to pick up your kids, and I'm taking them to the pool. And you didn't give me the option to say no or let's coordinate.
Like, I'm taking them.
You just said, have them outside and I'm pulling up and I'm taking them. And
I did almost blind them with sunscreen
in their eyes.
Well, they're so fair. Your kids are like, my kids like have a little bit of like gold undertone. Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at,
Lake,
freckles,
especially the freckles.
And the truth is that that he didn't say anything to me. Like, I didn't know not to
they
put
came
it.
out when they were like blind. They were like, ah!
I just felt like I was like, the last thing I wanted to do was like take your kids and then them come back like a red apple burn. Like, thanks a lot, Cindy.
But it didn't matter. It didn't matter. That was one of the best gifts I received. To not ask questions and to just do.
Just do.
And I think you could see what people who they use their gifts. So if somebody liked to cook, they would bring a meal. Maybe somebody wasn't a cook, they would bring a book. Or maybe someone was good with kids. And
I'm not good.
Yeah, and offer to pick up the kids. But I think the most important thing is whatever your relationship is with that person, not trying to force beyond that. So I had women who I was very close to, and I was okay letting them in and letting them see. So they might come and sit with me at chemo, and I was okay with that. But I might not be okay with like my neighbor doing that.
Yes.
So I think just knowing what your relationship is and not asking, just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it.
And listen, if they don't like what you make, they'll put it in the freezer or pass it along. But I think it's just that act of kindness and just doing what comes to your heart for that person.
I think that some people, when a close friend or someone they know has a cancer diagnosis, that they don't know what to do, so they become what's like paralyzed.
Right.
And it's not because they don't know what to say.
Right.
They don't know how to help. They don't know, should they text you? Should they drop off a blanket? How many blankets did you get?
Like 8.
Yeah,
maybe 10.
Yeah, a lot of. I remember you were like, I keep getting blankets. I was like, that's nice.
We love blankets, and the kids love blankets too, so that was great.
So, but I think some people kind of become paralyzed, and because they don't know what to do, they could become frozen, and they are inactive, and not out of lack of compassion.
Right.
That it may be their first time experiencing something like that. Right. And so for the people that don't know what to do in a situation like that, what would you recommend for them?
Sure. I think, I'm even like that today. I know people who are struggling with cancer in this community, but I don't know them that well. So I'm trying to figure out what can I do? And that's after I just went through this. I think the best thing they could do is contact somebody they know who is closer to the person.
Okay, that's a great idea.
And then they're not trying to think, or time goes by, they feel guilty, which, I guarantee you the person who's going through it isn't thinking, why hasn't Susan called me? Where is she? They're not thinking that. But I think if they really want to do something, to contact somebody they know who's close to that person and say, what does that family really need right now? And, or they could just shoot a text and say, hey, I don't know what to do, but I'm thinking about you and I care about you. So it doesn't have to be a thing.
Yes.
It can just be a thought or a prayer or a text. Sometimes that means a lot.
So what would you tell people not to do? That's okay. Tell them. They need to know.
Yeah,
I read this book. I read the book, Nothing to Fear, and it says, like, don't, if someone's dying or has passed away, don't say, like, there's somebody, now they're in heaven and they're, and I've said that 20 times to somebody, and they say, like, it's like the least helpful thing. And I didn't know, but I truly believe that they are.
Right.
And I truly believe that. And that would give me solace and peace.
Right.
And so, but it literally says, like, it's like the number one thing not to say. And I'm like, oh, I had no idea. But I mean, people really don't know.
I know. I think for me, I was surrounded by, when I, was in the middle of it, I looked around and the friends that I was surrounded with and even acquaintances and community, they were really wonderful people who I, wanted to be with and to be around. So the only thing I guess that I would try to avoid is trying to fix it or trying to come up with solutions to fix something, because I think when we're in fear, that we automatically go to, instead of feeling the emotion or just sitting with the person or saying, I don't know, I can't imagine what this must feel like, you want to fix. So here's a list of doctors I think you should maybe look at. Or have you tried these mushrooms mixed with this powder? And I heard if you drink it, it's really great. Like, none of that.
Okay. See, that's really good, because I know that we have a friend who was like, this person, MD Anderson, you know what I mean? And only because they wanted for you to have the best people to help you, but you did have the best person to help you, right?
Right.
So, but I could see, so that's good. That's really good to know, because I mean, you're, especially, I know for me, my thing is problem solving.
Right.
So, give me a problem, let's break it out, and then let's find this and that. And so, so that wasn't, I didn't feel that when you, called me with, the diagnosis, it was the day of cheerleading trouts for ECMS. It was cheerleading trouts for ECMS.
And I had just been
at my
house the night before.
Rebecca came to she has stage 4 cancer, is unaware. She comes to my house to help my daughter practice to make ECMS cheer, which is our middle school cheerleading squad. And she left. We had pizza. We were in great spirits. And you got the call.
My doctor called me that night. And my husband was asleep. My kids were asleep. And he said, why don't you wake Murray up, my husband, and let's be on the phone together. And I said that I didn't want to do that. And when he told me, I didn't want to tell them. I wanted them to have one more night's sleep before they knew the news, and I needed some time to digest it just alone. So yeah, you just go right up until the moment and you're still working and doing. And
so you didn't tell Murray the first night?
No, I let them sleep. I did not want to wake him up and tell him. I just wanted him to have one more night where that wasn't his reality.
So what did you do the next morning? Just like he's getting his coffee, you're like, it's like, did you Lisa let him have some of his coffee first?
I guess. I really don't remember that, but I remember saying, this is what's going on. And, there are different stages of news that people receive. So I knew I had cancer, and but the kind of cancer it was a very treatable cancer. Okay, that was great news, right? Kind of, sort of. But what I didn't know was how dire it was, because they hadn't staged it yet. So I had to have the PET scan first so they could see where all it was. And that's what they do to stage it. So I got bad news in increments. And so that bad news came a couple weeks later when I found out it was everywhere. So, but, you know, the good news is the chemo for the type of cancer I had, Hodgkin's lymphoma, it is a set treatment depending on what stage it is. So that's why I didn't need to go to MD Anderson, or it was very set formula. My oncologist was wonderful, and they started chemo immediately, and it worked, started working immediately. So I'm grateful. That's not everyone's story.
So during the time that you were going through chemo, what do you like? So for those who've never, you know, or don't know a lot. I mean, I honestly don't, even though I know that chemotherapy is a treatment for cancer.
Right.
I didn't really know a whole lot about it, like, you know, the infusions and like kind of how you felt, and that it's actually like staged, like it's progressive.
Right.
And I guess the effects of it, the side effects get worse until the end.
Right. So if you had asked me before I was diagnosed, what is one of my worst fears, it would be to like have chemotherapy. That just sounded like the most horrible thing that could ever happen to me.
Well, I mean, because
Well, no, I had to have a port put in surgically so that they could then administer it through my port. That means you're not being stuck every time, and your veins would collapse from the IV. And also the chemotherapy, the medicine is so highly toxic that it can't really, that it's just not safe for it to be administered that way. So I had to have surgery and have a port put in. This is somebody who I can't even watch my kids get their shots. It's so like,
it's kind of like you were faced with like all your fears.
All of my fears right off the bat. I have phobia of needles. I thought having chemotherapy would be the worst thing that ever happened. But when you're in that situation, you just do the next thing.
You just do the next thing
and just show up. It was hard, but it was not as hard as I thought it would be.
Well, that's good.
It was terrible, but some weeks it wasn't terrible. So,
well, you were still coaching.
I wanted to, not because I thought that they couldn't live without me. Again, it was very selfish. It was something that kept me feeling like a normal person.
I'll never forget one of the things that I felt that I was supposed to do for Rebecca during her cancer time was just call her and talk about whatever she wanted to talk about. But when I saw you at the cheer practice, I had not seen her in person. I was like, oh my gosh, like she didn't have any hair and she was wearing this, and it was like, you know, and I called my husband. I was crying. I said, oh my gosh. I said, Rebecca looks really sick. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, and he goes, Cindy, because you talk to her, people don't sound sick.
Right.
You know, so you've been talking to her, so she's always kind of been, and I think that's probably best for me to kind of like live in a bubble.
Just stick to the phone. The phone call.
I do well in the bubble, like where everything, you know, like everything's still okay. Right. We fun fact about Rebecca and I, we went on a trip to celebrate her, and people thought that we were lesbians.
Because my hair was a lot shorter.
So short, and so we went to the spa resort, which is for all adults, and I was like, well, people are going to think that we're a lesbian couple because it's like a romantic place. And she goes, well, I'll wear really nice earrings. And I was like, okay. But this guy in the pool gave us a dirty look.
Right.
And it made me so sad for all the lesbians out there. I was like, this guy,
it's not cool.
It's not cool.
You know,
the look that he gave us.
It's crazy because it is really interesting when my hair was really, really short and I was not wearing a scarf anymore. And I never did wigs because I just didn't want to.
Kind of wish you did wigs.
Yeah.
I kind of wish you did
wigs. Wigs were not me. I put on a wig and my son burst into tears immediately. And I was like, he was like, oh, get
like he'll let you know exactly how
he'll he'll let you know exactly how he feels. But I would get looks sometimes from people just because of my short hair, and not nice looks. And it made me realize so many people don't know what
I
other
know.
people are going through.
It's so, I mean,
And
it's
just by appearance.
It's just so important, like the basic thing, like don't judge a book by its cover.
Right.
I mean, nobody knows. And it's so important because I feel in society, especially with social media and just the American ways, we can get a snapshot of someone and then make an opinion on them.
Right.
And
it made me realize what other people maybe deal with all the time that I didn't realize before. But I do want to share with you what was interesting. Going back to, weeks I would have chemo, weeks I wouldn't have chemo. A lot of people would say to me, well, it'll be all be over soon. And then it'll be okay. It'll all be over soon. And then you don't have to think about it. And what I realized is I had to find moments of okayness in just throughout the day. So I might have 10 minutes of feeling okay. Mm-hmm. And then in a week, I might have 2 days of feeling okay. But I couldn't just say my life is over until I'm through this, until the chemo's over. My life is going to be terrible. I had to find joy throughout. And that was part of the coaching, just being able to show up on off weeks of chemo and do something that made me feel like that I wasn't going through chemo.
I'm reading this book right now called, which I would give it to you, but I know you won't read it. Rebecca and I have a really great friendship, but she never listens to anything that I say. But there is this book. It's called Sacred Pace by Terry Loper. And I'll tell you, it is just kind of like being within the moment.
Right.
I think that you probably...
Yeah, I think I learned how to do that through my first journey. And then I was able to apply those tools. And so I set my coffee table where I had flowers, I had a candle, I had my favorite books. The kids would come and we would play all these board games. But I didn't really have to move off this little corner of the couch. But it was all this joy that was just like right here in this little, space. And so I was able to develop things like that.
That's some great advice for those who are, coming into the, cancer journey, is making a space, like a joy space.
Yeah.
Yeah. A little space that you don't really have to move from, and having all the things that you love around
all your
you.
favorite
and people
things
can come
and visit and hang out with you. That was some of my favorite things, when people would come to my house and just sit with me. And if they were there too long, I would say, okay, I can't, I'm going to have to go lie down. But, just having companionship and phone calls and community, that's, I think, the most important thing.
What do you feel that is a common, misconception about someone who's going through cancer? That like before you went through it yourself, that you thought the journey was like this, and then when you went through it, it was something different.
I think a misconception was I thought that they were so miserable and so sick, and I would have been one of those that thought, well, their life is on hold. Their life is pretty much on hold until, or if they get through this. And the one thing I learned was that no matter what we're going through, you can't put your life on hold. You still have to live your life. Go walk outside or play a board game. I couldn't take my kids to do incredible things with them, but I could sit and play a board game with them. Mm-hmm. And it sounds so crazy, but because of that, we love board games now, and we play all the time.
What's your favorite board game?
My favorite board game is called Aggravation, and hardly anybody in my family wants to play with me because I'm so competitive.
Aggravation, didn't we play that? Like, is that from the 80s?
It's a really old. It's probably, it has marbles, and you use strategy, some luck, and it's really intense and just super fun.
That's your favorite, but they don't want to play with you because you're so
I can
competitive.
coerce. Murray is like, I'm not playing. I'm not playing with you.
That's like us with Monopoly with Jeff. We're like,
yeah,
and he'll. I mean, it'll be all the little cousins. and he has no problem.
Oh yeah,
like just tearing it up.
Oh, we're brutal. But I think the misconception, I would have thought that person's life is over. You know, I would have seen that person as just a sick person. And there's still levels of joy and activity, depending on where you are in the chemo. You know, I had chemo 1 week on, 1 week off. And the week off, I was usually okay. I could go do some things. So I think knowing that is important also.
So we're wrapping up. What are your final advice, or, you know, something that you really want people to know about that time, like how either they could support a friend who's going through it or someone who's been recently diagnosed, how to help them have peace with the process?
Peace with the process. I think that is such a great question. And for me, you know, and everybody's different, and I'm still learning too. I'm still learning and seeking. But for me, it was surrender. And when I surrendered, I was then able, it opened up space for me to learn and relax. But if I was in a constant fight,
yes,
I could.
Well, they say that. They say you're fighting cancer.
Yeah. And I think for me, the word surrender, there's so much power in that. It doesn't mean you're giving up. It means that you're really having faith that everything's going to be okay. So surrender, trusting the doctors, asking for help, and not, you know, you have to really be humble and have no shame and say, hey, I need help. My family needs help. My husband needs help with dinner, and let people help you. So those are really my 2 takeaways.
Well, thank you for coming. You are part of the reason why I'm having this podcast, and I'm just so grateful.
Oh, thanks, Cindy. It's been fun.
Bye, you guys. Thank you. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. Please like, subscribe, and follow. So Hype Cindy.